In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful colour block card really simply by using a few of the dies in the set of Stitch Dot squares. So I've got the set here and I've already chosen the squares I want to use. So counting from the outside, I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, number 12, nearly counted wrong then, and number 14. So I'm just taking those two squares out to start with. But what I'll also need is a square that is exactly 4 times that square. So you can check it to see which one is actually right. 1, 2, and it's actually this one, which is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 6. So to make this piece, I'm going to use dies 12, 14, and 6. So quite easy to remember. So die number 12 is 4 times the size of die number 6. So really simple. So we're going to start first of all with the 2 smaller dies. We'll move this out of the way. And again, I'm using a piece of magnetic sheet just to hold things in place. I'm going to place the die down and I'm going to place the square in it nice and evenly in the center. And I've chosen this lovely sort of dark red Crafts 2 linen card to cut it in. And we're just going to run that piece through. Now you will need to cut this in each color that you're using. So you'll need to cut it in 8 different colors. I've already cut it in a lighter red and I've matched all my shades so that I'm cutting them in a dark red and a light red, a dark green, a light green, a dark yellow, a light yellow, a dark blue and a light blue. But you can choose any colours at all. You could use pattern paper, striped papers, they'd look beautiful. And what I've done is I've already cut this in the light red and I've used a piece of my double-sided adhesive sheet and stuck the frame down to this. I'm then going to take my dark red piece. So again, this is using dies 12 and dies 14. And the great thing about the Stitch Dot is that it has the Stitch Dot detail on the inside and the outside of the stitch line, meaning that both the piece that you cut and the piece you cut from have that detail on it. And all I'm going to do is place this down onto the double-sided adhesive next to that square. Makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to rotate them then, and I'm going to put the light red in the middle of the dark red and the dark red in the middle of the light red, and simply trim that out. So I'm going to trim out the excess card or the excess double-sided adhesive, and you can use that again for other projects. What I tend to do is to have a piece of the carrier sheet next to me so that I can place the pieces on and I can use those in this or for other projects. So I'm just going to separate those 2 squares down the middle, and then quite simply I'm going to cut down the center through the frame, through that square and through the end square with my scissors. You could use a craft knife or you could use your guillotine, whichever you feel more comfortable with. So I'm going to cut through there, making sure I go all the way through the diagonals, and then it's simply a case of matching those 2 pieces together to give me the alternate square. So there I've got my red on red, and of course by doing it this way I have 2 pieces, so I could put those together like that. And I could continue that, make a big piece, change colours. So many different things you can do with this technique. So we're going to move those out of the other way. And what I've done here is using the larger die. So this is die 6. I cut yellow, the dark blue, the darker red, and the darker green squares. And I cut them each one once. I then trimmed it down the centre to give me 4 pieces, which means by doing this you'll be able to make 4 cards exactly the same. You will only need 1 square of each for each to make 4 cards. So I'm going to bring in now little piece of card I've already made and I've matted and layered. So I'm going to start by adding the squares, and I'm using just a little bit of wet glue here, and it doesn't matter in which order you put these on, but you want to make sure that you get the stitch dot detail on the outside. So just spend a little time making sure that you keep that stitch dot detail going on the outside. And the reason we don't just cut the smaller square 4 times in the different colours is because that way you get the pattern continuing down and it doesn't look quite as neat as when you have the stitch pattern going all the way around the outside. So I'm going to glue down this last piece, which is the yellow. You can see there I've got a nice perfect square harlequin piece. So I'm simply then going to bring in, I have 2 pieces of the blue on blue, and on this one I think I've got a little bit of double-sided adhesive, so we're just going to peel that off. And I obviously don't want the dark blue against the dark blue, so this goes into the centre just like that. I take the light blue with the dark blue centre, and again take the double-sided off, and I match that square up so that I've got dark blue to light blue to dark blue to light blue to dark blue. Really simple. It looks as if you put lots more layers in than you have. So I've already got these squares made up. So I've got here the lighter red with the darker red. So I want the darker red to the centre on top of the red panel. I've got the lighter yellow with the darker yellow. This has all been done in Crafts 2 linen card, adds a beautiful texture. And again, darker yellow to the centre. And it looks as if you've got lots of dimension, as if you've done it with foam tape, and you really haven't. And just as a last minute thing to remind you, I'm just going to grab my glue eraser. I've got a few little marks of glue on here from the low-tech tape. So again, I've got these cut separately. So I'm going to take this dark green and this light green. And again, I don't want it there. So I want it going into the centre, just like that. Take a little bit of that adhesive off. There we go. And again, the next piece is the dark green going into the lighter green. And we pop that one on, matching up the corners, and again just clean off, and there we've got a perfect optical illusion. Which square are you looking at? It's almost got a patchwork look. So you've got a square there, you've got a square there, you've got a square there, but a really simple card, but works really well with these dies, because these dies have all been worked out to be mathematically correct. So the sizes are all in inch increments, which fit with our standard card blanks.